Former President of the Supreme Court, Baroness Hale, has said yesterday that people have been wrongly fined and prosecuted for breaking lockdown, thanks to the government's last-minute and confused introductions of new laws. Baroness Hale said the UK has seen a bewildering flurry of coronavirus laws since the end of March, with one set being published just 20 minutes before it came into force. She told the House of Lords Constitution Committee this morning government guidance has been confused for legally enforceable rules, suggesting the BBC News website often offered clearer explanations of the COVID-19 rules. Although I'm not so sure about that, seeing as the BBC get all their information from the government anyway. Certainly at the early stage of the lockdown, she said, there was huge confusion as to what was law and what was guidance. Mainly the confusion lay with the police, however. The guidance purported both to interpret the regulations and to give guidance on how they should be applied, not only to people who were trying to do their best, but also by people enforcing them. I think there's every reason to believe that some of the enforcement will have been used in respect of things that were not actually in the regulations, but only in the guidance. That's clearly inappropriate, and the government must always make a clear distinction between what is law and what is merely advice about how people should be behaving. That is almost the clearest moral to come from this sorry set of affairs. Which is why I and many others have said that you should fight any fixed penalty notices and appeal against any arrests made, especially as we see people being arrested for non-recordable offences after the police fail completely to follow their own engage, explain, encourage and enforce guidance.
Hello, I need some details from you because I'm going to report you for a fine for being in breach of Regulation 9 of the coronavirus legislation. Yes,
How am I in breach?
The first set of coronavirus laws were introduced in late March when Parliament was in recess and led to prosecutions of those breaking the stay-at-home rules, as well as thousands of fines being dished out. Baroness Hale giving evidence to the committee with fellow former Supreme Court Justice Lord Sumption said there was no need to avoid parliamentary scrutiny of the new laws. It meant Parliament had no opportunity to debate them for several weeks, she said. What's happened since then is a bewildering flurry of new regulations coming in at very short notice. Lord Sumption said MPs and Lords were effectively stymied, and scrutiny of the latter sets of lockdown laws, including a vote in Parliament last night on today's new tiered system, had only happened as a result of political pressure rather than constitutional scruple. He said, I certainly think it's desirable that government has to explain and produce evidence in support of drastic decisions they are to make. The best and most constitutional way of doing them is for them to face scrutiny, not only to committees but both chambers. Baroness Hale has accused the government of failing to draw up an effective framework for different levels of lockdown laws, which she said would have avoided unnecessary public confusion. We understand the huge complexity of trying to deal with a pandemic and how hard it is to make choices that have to be made, she said. What strikes me is the first lockdown, which went on from March to July, was a time when the government could have provided a settled framework for everyone, which everyone would understand, which then could be applied from time to time as appropriate and place. What strikes me is the first lockdown, which went on from March to July, was a time when the government could have provided a settled framework, which everyone would understand, which could then be applied from time to time as appropriate and from place to place as appropriate. If such a plan was formulated, we wouldn't have had the constant chopping and changing between the different levels of control. Of the government's efforts to publicise the rules, she added people should be told where they can find out what they need to know, and what they are told when they find it out ought to be clear and accurate. One of the difficulties is you need to get on the internet to find out most of this stuff, and sometimes it's the BBC website rather than a government website that has the clearest information. That seems to me to be unacceptable. Now, I don't think there's any need for me to pass comment on anything that's been said here. We all know that the actions taken by the government and the police were over the top, unlawful and not thought out, regardless to what some might say. There has been no real plan to follow, and before some people tell me that this is because we've never faced anything like it before and people are bound to make mistakes, I say to you, tell that to the thousands, if not tens of thousands of people who will die over the coming years because of not being able to get diagnosed or attend treatment for existing conditions. All those who will have or have died from suicide brought on by depression. The hundreds of thousands of people who are struggling to feed their families after losing their businesses and income. The government have contingency plans for most situations, plans that have been developed over years or decades, which may be amended from time to time, but would have been basic protocol to follow. The Civil Contingencies Act was one such plan of action which gave the government certain powers to do certain things in case of a civil emergency. But they decided to make up a new act, which was, as said, in part only published 20 minutes before coming into force, and in many cases written the day before being put before Parliament. Big thank you to channel supporters, especially these guys. Your support is truly appreciated. Please don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, as I know many of you will. And until next time, stay safe, look after each other, film the police and other officials.